Hello, everyone. I'm Tina Cosby with WTLC AM 1310 and 95.1 FM. This holiday season is truly upon us right now, and for those battling addiction, this time can be difficult. Today, we're going to be talking about this season and offering a season of support, resources for addiction and recovery. This is a season of support as well. So, together with our good friends at Eskenazi Health, we are wanting to make sure that you have the knowledge and the resources to help yourself and others in as many ways as possible. Joining us now to discuss further the season of support resources for addiction and recovery is Dr. Heather Fretwell. Dr. Fretwell is a psychiatrist from Eskenazi Health at the Sandra Eskenazi Mental Health Center. Dr. Fretwell, welcome. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm well, Tina. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thanks for being with us. This is, this topic comes up a lot. When you talk about the holidays and being especially difficult for those with addiction. So, I guess, why is it especially difficult? Why would the holidays be more difficult than any other time of the year for those with addictions?
I think the holidays can inadvertently set us up for perfect storms. And I think that's true for anyone. But it's in these perfect storms where more than one thing goes wrong at a time in someone's life, or where you have more than one or two major
Mhm.
stressors at a time in someone's life, that can particularly be triggering for someone recovering from a substance use disorder.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times you can deal with it day to day. You've learned that. You've really spent a lot of time engaged in your recovery. You have your community. You have your routines. You have your self care. And then here come the holidays, and now your schedule's different. And now
Right.
maybe you're not getting as much sleep. And now maybe you have an additional financial stress. Um,
I
and
see.
then maybe somebody at the Thanksgiving dinner table says something really hopefully unintentionally triggering or harsh, or there's a disagreement or uh, something happens. And so, what often triggers a relapse is more than one thing happening, kind of piling on at the same time. And
Mm.
unfortunately, the holidays can really be a set of environments where that can happen.
So tell me about expectations during this seasonal time of the year. All of those things you just went through as far as triggers. What about expectations, or are expectations included in what you just described?
Yes, I think in terms of expectations of ourselves, expectations of others, we can, a lot of times in recovery, I notice people feel like they have to try to make holidays up to their families in some ways, like maybe in the past
Ah, yeah, yeah.
they weren't like perfect, or they
Hmm.
were using, or they caused some disruption themselves. And so there can be a lot of pressure that people put on themselves to even go above and beyond. And unfortunately, that can also be a stress that ends up
Hmm.
causing some issues.
Does it matter where a person may be in their recovery as far as how they manage expectations and manage the triggers and manage the threats to their sobriety? Or is it across the board? Because, a lot of people will say, well, I'm 6 months sober, or somebody is only, well, they're only 6 months into it, so don't do this and don't do that. Because there are a lot of people around recovering addicts that want to do the right thing as well. So the point in their recovery, what is it that people around them need to know in terms of the triggers and the threats to their sobriety?
Really give somebody who's recovering and in recovery from a substance use disorder, honestly, some years. And one of
Ah,
the, I think, most beneficial things that families can do is keep away visual and scent triggers. So a visual trigger, like someone holding a beer, for example, can actually be one of the things that most intensifies craving. So you see someone else doing the thing that's hard for you to not do, then unfortunately those visual triggers can set up a feedback loop in our brains that
Hmm.
actually enhance craving. You also hear this a lot with people trying to quit cigarettes, for example. One of the biggest
Mm.
triggers is being next to somebody smoking a cigarette, right?
All right.
So it's very similar.
So, what should those in recovery do as far as being in holiday settings? Because some of these settings, more often than not, families, they're larger, and someone may have a beer, a bottle in their hand, or someone may have a cocktail in their hand. Should they just avoid these settings and situations, or should they try to find, I guess, an oasis within I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what that strategy might look like. If you want to, you're a recovering addict, you want to be around your family, but know that there are going to be certain things that might act as a trigger. How should you navigate that?
No, that's an important challenge. And I think a lot of it is pre-planning to really
Oh.
anticipate, right? That there are going to be challenges because I think what can often happen is people get really taken off guard.
Ah. So
And so
something that's not expected.
correct. Like they might say, well, think I can be around the family and it'll be fine.
Hmm. Hmm.
And not take into consideration, oh, wait a minute, maybe this is going to affect me more than I'm projecting. And so kind of go in with a plan. And that plan may also be to maybe, if the gathering is usually 6 hours, maybe you stay for 2 or 3.
Hmm.
Maybe you have a couple real supports in that family that are will say, "Hey, you sit next to me, and I won't drink."
Ah. Mm.
And if you need to go outside and talk for a few minutes, then just tap me on the shoulder. I'll go with you.
Hmm.
And maybe there's some different things going into that you can kind of again anticipate. Hey, there might be a stressful moment, whether it's seeing somebody have a drink or
Hmm.
feeling defensive or feeling on even on the sidelines of other family members having an argument
Hmm.
can be very uncomfortable. And so having a plan for these kind of stressors.
Yeah. So, what should family members do that want to be supportive of the recovering addict? Should they just ban alcohol or alter their consumption for the recovering addict, or how should families be supportive in this regard?
Honestly, if they can, then avoiding alcohol and normalizing that we can everybody can have a lot of good fun sober is a great approach. And then
Mhm.
if you really feel like you is a important part of your holiday tradition, talk to your family member about it. Maybe do that at the end, where maybe they have either decided that they can leave a little early or um, just really try to affirm your family member. Also, tell them how proud you are of them for their efforts.
Hmm. Yeah. So I've seen there's a couple of different scenarios, and tell me how the recovering addict might best handle this one. You're at a gathering. I've been to family gatherings, and the rule has been no alcohol, right? And
Hmm.
so there's always some jerk that goes to the car and comes back and says, "Well, I just wanted one," and then is in and it's like that person is asked to leave, and so on and so forth. But what about the person that says, "Oh, you can have one"? Why one's not going to hurt you? You've been good this long. What's one going to do? Somebody that's just truly not well versed with that. I'll tell you a couple of strategies that some of the recovering addicts have told me but what should
Hmm.
you do?
Um, and a lot of times try to view that as an opportunity to educate your family
Ah,
and say, right, it's like trying to smoke one cigarette.
mm-hmm,
It's like trying to uh, 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 eat a candy bar when you're on a gluten-free you're on a
yeah,
Atkins diet,
yeah,
right? It's something that actually has a lot more impact than you might think.
mm-hmm,
And also try to say, hey, just I tell you what, I've been good. Just let me be good. Please
Yeah,
don't
let
offer
me
me
be good.
again.
Well, the two situations that I wanted to share with you. One of the addicts told me that he learned in one of his meetings to tell people like that who are pushy and want you to drink with them because they're drinking, is that I'm allergic, can't handle it, man. I'm allergic,
That's a great
right?
one. I like
And
that.
I'm allergic to alcohol. I cannot do it. You don't want me to go into fits here, do you? Oh, no, no. Well, I can't handle it. I'm allergic to it. And the other one told me this last year. And he was saying, and there was no alcohol or anything around anywhere, but he was clutching this water bottle.
Hmm.
And he said, I said, you that water bottle. I said something about the water bottle. I can't even remember. And he said, this is my therapy. This helps me because whenever I'm in a situation where I feel I want to have a drink in my hand, I keep the water bottle in my hand to remind me, to drink water or not to use. And I'd never heard of that, but he said that's what worked for him. And when he goes places or does things, and even I guess maybe the situation that we were all in, it became a little stressful when he kept holding on to the water bottle because he said at that point in time, his mind was telling him he wanted to have a drink in his hand, but the water bottle helped him to not drink. I mean, those were just two interesting stories that recovering addicts had shared with me in terms of how they cope. Um, your thoughts on both of those?
I like both of them so much, and
Uh-huh.
I just love this. I can be in this field for so long, and the people that are doing the work, that are figuring out what works
Mhm.
for them, are so marvelously inventive and creative, and they keep sharing these great ideas.
Yeah, yeah. So, what about we talk about resources? We've talked about resources for addiction and recovery. Meetings, support meetings are held year round, daily, holidays, nights, days, whatever. Is it a good idea, perhaps, to strengthen your resolve for the recovering addict to maybe hit a meeting before Christmas dinner or hit a meeting before the New Year's Eve party? New Year's Eve is oh, wow. I mean, the liquor flows on that, but we'll get back to that. But is it a good idea to hit a meeting before and then maybe even hit a meeting after? What do you think?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I would say before and after. Absolutely. Before, anticipate potential triggers, anticipate potential discomfort that might lead to cravings to use and how you're going to deal with it. And then come back afterwards and report. How did it go?
Uh-huh.
And join back in together in fellowship with everybody else that just went through the same stress that you did.
Yeah, yeah. So about the resources, we talked about resources for addiction and recovery. Dr. Fretwell, can you go over some of those for people that may not know? And then again, I think the resources are just as important for the support system, the village, the families, the friends that want to help the addict through their recovery or during their, as they recover. What are some of the resources that you think are important to share?
Now, fortunately, resources have really proliferated in these last 10 years.
Mhm.
One of the hugest things is that the 12-step meeting community has also gone online. So if
Oh,
you're,
wow.
I have so many people that tell me they really enjoy going online and going to meetings, and
Mhm.
sometimes even English language meetings in other countries. As
Uh-huh.
long as you keep track of the time zones
Yeah.
and you can figure it out. And what a delight it is to see the universality of the human struggle and the human drive to heal. And to come together into community. And so that's Alcohol Anonymous, that's Cocaine Anonymous, that's Gambling Anonymous, that's Al Anon for us, supports for family members of persons with substance use or process use disorders. Um,
Yeah.
and so those are huge. There's also more locally here in the Indianapolis metro area, a huge network of community mental health centers, including Sandra Eskenazi Community Mental Health Center, including Adult and Child, including Cummins for three of them, that really are hugely devoted to improving the lives of people with substance use disorders. There's
Mhm.
Fairbanks, um, on the northeast side associated with community hospital. And they also have a great number of outpatient offerings and supports for people with substance use disorders and their friends and family members. There's a recovery cafe network here in Indianapolis.
Hmm.
If you just look up Recovery Cafe Indianapolis, and that will feed you into another huge network of recovery related disorders and some really great people.
How does the Recovery Cafe work? It sounds interesting. It sounds neat.
Yeah, it's kind of got their own set of meetings, but they'll also guide you to resources. And so it's
Oh,
all peer run. Um,
uh-huh.
and it's developed um, by folks who have faced these challenges to support others who are facing these challenges. With some, I do think they get some institutional support from other entities in the Indianapolis area, but they do some really good work, and they've just really made themselves available in the community.
Yeah. And so the services at the Sandra Eskenazi Mental Health Center as well.
Correct. Yes, we are proud to say that we're some of the first people 7 decades ago to really have a dedicated program to support folks with substance use disorder.
So, substance use disorder, living your life, going to work every day, family, just things that you simply must continue with as you progress through your recovery. What have you found in your studies, in your experience, is the best way to strike that balance to live as normally as you can, like you used to, but now that you're in recovery, um, navigate your threats, I guess, to your sobriety, or what do you call it, your triggers? What's the best way that you found it is to strike that balance, or is it kind of like a self-adjusting brake? You just have to adjust as it goes. I'm just curious because that's added pressure year round, not just the holidays for the addict. Yeah.
Absolutely. And me remaining plugged into your community year round and your resources is really so incredibly important. I've had so many people tell me that the beginning of their relapse was when they started feeling like meetings were unimportant.
Mm.
And some of the best pieces of advice that I've heard from people going through this is that they've had to learn to be relentlessly honest with themselves, including in terms of what they can and can't manage.
Yeah.
Because again, we kind of have this pressure to try to do it all.
Yeah. So do some people in your circle have to go? Say for instance, if you have friends, that's what they do. That's a part of that circle. Does the addict have to learn that in to make sure that you stay sober, and in continuing along this journey of recovery, that certain things are going to have to go?
One of the first things that I heard when I was a medical student at Fairbanks, I spent a month up there in their residential and intensive outpatient programs, was everybody was talking about changing people, places, and things.
Mm.
And that was over 20 years ago. And it was wisdom then and it's wisdom now. And sometimes these are really hard decisions. Again, especially when you're in your first several years. And I want to re-emphasize this: years, not months or weeks, because it takes a long time for the brain to change its patterns at all.
Ah, yeah. So Dr. Fretwell, your thoughts on these commercials, these advertisements that come on either online, on TV, even on the radio, that says we can cure you from your addiction. What are your thoughts on that, and how should people listen to those? My understanding has always been that there is no such thing as a cure, but recovery can be long lasting and fruitful and life changing and life affirming. So recovery is where you want to get. A cure is a misnomer. That's my understanding. But when I hear these people, are they misleading? Are they false?
I would agree with that assessment. Um, it's it's really unfortunate because it's like saying you want to have a cure for diabetes or a
Uh,
cure for um,
Asthma, something chronic,
hypertension or
hypertension. Yeah.
yeah, a cure for asthma. There's so many things that we can treat and we can manage, and people can live really good lives with support, and sometimes medication, right?
Hmm.
Um, but to ignore the reality that these are disease processes. By the time a substance use disorder gets really, really out of control, it's because the brain itself has become very dysregulated.
Mm.
I like to think about substance use disorders as kind of like a retrovirus to our survival code. It gets really stuck in there. It's like, I have to breathe, I have to eat, I have to drink water, I have to use the drug, I have to, make the
Mm.
bed, in the very same matter of fact way. And to break free of that, once it's got to that state, it's really treating a chronic condition. It's something that we are all vulnerable to. I tell people that I could very well easily have a substance use disorder. I just haven't found my molecule and I haven't gone hunting for it. And so I
Hmm.
try not to go look. We are all vulnerable to this kind of dysregulation happening to our brains. And it depends on molecule exposure, stress levels, and a lot of times the earlier in your life that you start using, the more serious the condition can become.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that. Yeah. So where do we? Yeah, yeah. So where's the best spot to be in terms of all of this, in terms of knowledge? Because I always want to include, because addicts are not on an island. They live in communities, in families, and things of that nature. And I think I'm finding, or I'm hearing anyway, more and more families and villages wanting to support those who are struggling, with substance use disorder and the like. So I guess where should we be now, and who should know what?
I think the information is spreading out there that
Hmm.
substance use disorder does involve permanent biological changes in someone's
Okay.
brain, and that it's not a moral failing to have developed a substance use disorder, that people can make choices, that people can recover, and that they recover best with empathetic support, um, and that we can all get stressed out in this big old goofy world. And at the end of the day, one of the things this is something I heard some years ago. At the end of the day, we're all just walking each other home. You
Wow, I
know,
like that. Yeah.
and so what can we do to be kind? What can we do to be supportive? What do we need to do to set our own boundaries? What do we need to do to conserve our own energy and not overextend ourselves, which might lead us to be um, more likely to be thoughtless or rude or,
Mhm. Yeah.
irritable? How can we all take care of ourselves and each other?
So if we see or know of someone, a loved one, friend, neighbor, whoever, that we can just pretty much tell is suffering with substance abuse problem, possibly even addiction, although I guess that has to be diagnosed. But what can we do to try to help that person get help? What can we do if we see somebody struggling?
We can let them know that help's available. If we have material that we've printed out, maybe with like helplines on it or
Mhm.
meeting times on it, we can give them that material. Essentially, what we can do is plant seeds.
I was going to say, what does the conversation sound like?
Yeah, it can be like, hey, I just noticed that you're struggling, and I care about you, and I'm open to talk to you about what's going on with you, and I'm a bit worried, and I've heard that these places can help if you're ever concerned that you're using too
Mm.
much, or that you need to slow down, or that things aren't going quite where you want them to. And so essentially, what that friendly conversation is again, planting the seed. And the person hearing it is the one that's going to have to take in that seed and grow it, right?
Mhm. How,
But we can do as external supports is plant the seed and create like an open conversation environment for that person.
how often should we do that? Because then, I mean, a lot of times people are in denial. They don't want to, they don't want to acknowledge it or whatever. How often and what setting? I guess maybe someplace comfortable or safe, or I mean, it shouldn't really be confrontational, right?
Correct. I would definitely avoid those unless every so often there's a carefully calculated planned intervention that can be
Mm,
appropriate, especially if you're working with an organization that that specializes in substance use disorder, um, and getting some tips on how to make something like that effective. But typically, you don't want this to be confrontational. You do want this to be safe. You don't want to come across as nagging. But as opportunities come up where you notice, hey, you don't look so good. Did you throw up again this morning? Are you okay? Is this um, do you want to talk to me about what's going on?
hmm.
Things like that.
Yeah. Something. Is there something I can help you with? Is that a
That's
good
a
question?
very nice opening statement. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, Dr. Fretwell, before we wrap up, I just want to make sure that we've covered as much as we wanted to, and if we haven't, by all means, go ahead. And then I want to have you give the address, the website for Sandra Eskenazi, Eskenazi Health, and the like. So, is there anything that you want to add?
The one thing I don't think I spoke as much about specifically was opiate use disorder. And
Oh.
so I do want to make sure that before we close, in addition to folks, I think we spoke mostly about alcohol use disorder and maybe some other things.
Mm,
But I do really want to specifically note that there's multiple organizations to support opiate use disorder, including there's two methadone clinics in town. Sandra Eskenazi's is in the Twin Air neighborhood. It was newly opened this summer. It's a beautiful treatment site. We really wanted to have a site that really embraced the dignity and efforts of the folks coming to treatment. There's also
mhm,
multiple clean slate organizations. There's multiple Suboxone clinics.
mhm,
We have our adult addictions clinic at 3171 North Meridian.
mhm.
Um, there's a lot of resources out there for anyone with trying to get away from pills, trying to get away from fentanyl. Um,
Are the
uh,
dynamics of that addiction and treatment different? You said we didn't speak about, we did kind of hit on, say gambling, drugs, alcohol, what have you. But opiate, what's the difference there? It sounds like it's in a different category.
One of the differences, I think, is that for some of the other substance use disorders, there may or may not be medication assisted treatment available. Like for
Oh,
alcohol, there's some things that can assist with cravings. But for opiate use disorder, the research is in. You are profoundly more likely to stay sober if you're taking an assisting medication,
oh,
such
wow.
as buprenorphine or methadone.
Mm, okay. Yeah. So opiate use disorder, the pill. Yeah, that's very important indeed. Um, wow. Oh, quite a bit. It's quite a bit, quite a bit. So again, Dr. Fretwell, if people want to find out more about you, the program, Sandra Eskenazi, where can they go? What can they do?
Our website is www.eskenazihealth.edu. We're very proud to have an edu domain because we really try to be an educational resource for our community at large.
Yeah, indeed. And these resources are available 24/7. Holidays are no exception. These resources are always available, correct?
That's correct. And the Eskenazi emergency room is always open, and our crisis intervention unit is always open. I also want to do a shout out to 988
Yes.
as our
Yes.
crisis hotline. It's also 24/7. And folks, you don't actually have to be suicidal to call 988. You can be in severe distress and not know who to call. Call 988. It's okay. They want to hear from you.
988 indeed. And that was my last question. You got me. That was going to be my last question, the crisis hotline. And the thing about that is that a human answers that.
That's
Uh,
correct.
and a lot of people that have used it have come back and said that it's been so helpful because they don't feel like it's AI or whatever. There is an absolutely positively human being on the other end of that line. So, Dr. Fretwell, thank you again so very much. And we always appreciate you and your input and all the work that you do.
Thanks so much, Tina. It's a pleasure to be here.